Technical Writer HQ community. So tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. Thanks for inviting me. I'm a senior technical creative writer for Lumen Technologies. Lumen is a company formerly known as CenturyLink, so it sells everything from internet to SaaS solutions. So really heavy in tech, all sorts of different products. So it keeps me busy, keeps me on my toes. As their senior technical creative writer, I write everything from ad copy and email copy to longer form technical documents like white papers. So I'm the writer for their technology marketing team.
Very cool. And walk us through the journey of how you got into this position, and also give us some background to this idea of your title, which is Senior Creative Technical Writer, which is a different title than I think many of the people are used to who may be watching this video,
Yeah.
and how that title came about.
I love that question because it was my first question when I interviewed for this role. I was like, I was so interested in this role because I've never seen that title before. And I consider myself both, a technology minded and a creative person. So I loved seeing both of those in the role's title. And I immediately asked my boss about that. And he said that he kind of created the title because he didn't think that technical writer really covered all of the bases of what this role was going to be about. But I work for like a pretty small, scrappy marketing team. We're a new team within Lumen. So I just cover all of the writing bases on the technical side and the creative side. So some examples of the creative things that I write, I actually run an internal sales enablement blog where I break down complex technologies into like these really like bite-sized digestive pieces and talking points for our sales and customer success people. And that's just like a really fun, quirky, corny blog, actually told from the point of view of a blue futuristic alien. So I really get to use my creative side for roles like that. But then I also cover white papers and more technical interviews and things on the tech side as well. But how I got into this role was actually through science journalism. My background is in journalism. So I worked for a scientific society in Washington, D.C. as the science magazine editor and writer. So I got a lot of great experience, just like breaking down complex scientific ideas into infographics and interviews and all these different types of article pieces. And so now I'm doing the exact same thing at Lumen, just on the marketing side.
And for many of the people watching, they're looking to break into technical writing. And when you think about your journey, what are some of the things that you're like, hey, I think this is for me? So, because they're going through that self-identification process right now,
Mhm.
wondering like, is this right for me? And what were some of the signs for you?
Well, I had a really nonlinear path into technical writing. I didn't go to school for technical writing. I was an English major, and I don't have like any technical writing certificates. So I kind of jumped around from industry to industry until I found technical writing, and it was such a great fit for me. And I think why it spoke to me is just I knew I wanted to be a writer, and I love working in the tech space. It's so interesting. Things change so fast. I get to write about really, really cool technologies and how they're going to shape the future. And it's just something new every day, which is what I really like about it.
Hey, very cool. And then during this career path, did you find like any challenges in particular when getting to the current job that you have today, and growing in your career?
Sure. I definitely imposter syndrome, I would say, is a challenge. But I think that it's important to know that even if you don't have a background in technical writing, as long as you're a strong writer and you're curious and you ask the right questions and you do your research, it's absolutely something that you can do. And then you can pick up those certificates and all those sorts of things that you want along the way.
Very cool. And would love to hear a little bit more about some of the projects that you've worked on. And I'm sure you've worked on a ton of different projects, but are there a few that really stand out to you and that you had an awesome time with or showed a lot of impact? Yeah, I would love to hear more.
Sure. I'm actually working on something now. It should be published in the next 2 weeks or so. And it's a white paper on the evolution of wide area networking post pandemic, and how enterprises and businesses are sort of like changing how their networks are set up to enable work from home employees and hybrid employees and increased collaboration, and all that good stuff. So that was something really interesting for me to dig into just because I had to do so much research. I don't have a background in computer science. And so I didn't really know how any of that stuff worked. And I just had to interview a lot of people, dig into my own research, get all of my writing reviewed. And then I got to work with a graphic design team to really bring that paper to life. And so now it's this like 10-page, visually interesting and rich document that I'm really proud of. So that was one of the more technical pieces that I've worked on that I really enjoyed. Another thing that I love to work on is video. So I don't make the videos myself. I work with a team on that, but I write video scripts on technology migrations. So for example, if a business wanted to switch from a more legacy network to, say, SD-WAN and SASE and a really cybersecurity forward network setup, I would write video scripts on how they might go about that process, that's a whole video podcast series that I do that is really fun as well.
Oh, super cool. And curious, you mentioned the research process for both of these, and would love to hear more about that process and how it works with talking to maybe subject matter experts, doing your own research, and also the verification process. Who it is that's verifying your work? Is it SMEs? Is it maybe other stakeholders or directors? What does that look like?
Sure. Well, as for who reviews my work, it's so many people. Lumen is like a 40,000 person company, so there's a ton of internal stakeholders. So my work goes through a lot of review, but mostly with solutions engineers. So people who really have that technical background and that know-how to like be able to help me tell the right story. But it also goes through legal review, brand review, and all these other different steps. But I would say that research is super important. I think one of the best things you can be as a tech writer is to be curious, because even if you do have a technical background, you're going to be working on different projects all the time, and you can't be an expert in everything. So it's just important to be able to know how to interview people, ask the right questions, and really get to the heart of what your audience wants to know. And then also do your own research to back that up.
And in terms of when you first started and you had to develop those relationships of like who's going to be like that solutions engineer or who's going to be verifying, what did that look like? Was there a clear roadmap of the relationships that you needed to build, or did you sort of have to figure it out on your own?
My team was really helpful in that. They always point me in the right direction. They tell me who I need to get in touch with, and then I sort of take the initiative and form my own relationship there. So I would just say like soft skills in general, interview skills are super important for technical writers. It's great to just like set a groundwork of like, getting to know someone, what they do, what their job is, what their role is, and then getting into the more technical questions. But then also trying to keep it human, like keep it focused on the what and the why, and how this is going to affect your end users because you're writing for them.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then, one of the things that I'd love to hear more about is the tools that you use. Are you using a set of internal tools for your work that your company created, or are you using outside tools in order to help enable your efficiency?
Yeah, I would say I use a lot of outside tools. I live on thesaurus.com. I would say most writers do. In technical writing, that's just as important. So I definitely spend a lot of time on thesaurus.com. I also use a couple like SEO tools for when I am sort of planning out content, finding the right headline, because you want people to read and find your content. So SEO is important. So I wrote this down. Let me see if I can find this for you. I use so many tools. So keywordtool.io is a great platform for finding keywords that are going to appear in search. Answerthepublic.com is a great way to find the questions that people are actually asking so that you can be the one to answer those questions and incorporate that into your writing. And then, so those are just great for coming up with SEO friendly headlines. And then another tool I use is a platform called User Testing. So this is, my company subscribes to this tool. But it's a way to get real-time feedback on your messaging and what you're writing. Like you can create these tests and then ask real people if that message is landing for them, if they understand what you're saying. And that's a really valuable way to get real feedback before you publish your document. And then to track content performance, I use Adobe Analytics and as well as another tool called Content Square, which just tells me if people are scrolling through, if people are clicking on what I want them to click on, and just how that content is performing after the fact.
And were some of these tools like prerequisites to know before you got the job, or did you learn most of them when you landed your job?
I learned most of them when I landed my job, but I would say just like I personally did a personal certification on SEO because I just think it's really interesting. And if you're writing any kind of content, it's just good to know the basics of search engine optimization. So the SEO tools I was already familiar with and already practiced with.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And then in terms of like ramp up period with learning new tools, how was that like? Did your team really help you with that in terms of onboarding there, or is it something you more had to learn on your own and figure out?
I think it's always good to like take your own initiative. There were things that I wanted to be well versed in before I started my job, so I got a few things under my belt. But my team has been great about making time for me to do things like that. We actually have professional development Fridays. So every other Friday for half of the Friday, we have professional development time that you can use for certifications and learning new platforms. And I definitely take advantage of that.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, it's a great idea.
It's like a version on summer Fridays, and it's every other Friday you get the summer Friday, and then on the next Friday you do professional development. It's a very good system.
Sounds like good company.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I know you mentioned some of the skills that have helped you, such as like soft skills, communication being very important. What are some of the other skills that you feel like are needed in order to step in and succeed in your role?
So my background in journalism really helped me as a technical writer. So it really is interviewing and researching are my top two. I think those are both just so important to tell the story that you want to tell. But of course, just practice writing. If you're not currently a technical writer, just practice writing any way you can. Um, One thing that I think is really helpful as a technical writer, especially if you don't have a background in technical writing, but that's a field you're trying to break into, you have to have a portfolio. Your portfolio is so important. And so, but at that point, I think you should also just like create your own website, host your portfolio on your website, and then you sort of get that exposure as well to like website design and UI and UX and all those important things, HTML coding, all that good stuff that could come in handy later down the road as a technical writer.
And did you have a good portfolio when you applied to the company that you're at now? And if you did have a portfolio, when did you start building it?
So I started building my portfolio when I was a journalist in DC. So I mean, I wrote over 100 articles by the time I left that job. So I had a really robust portfolio. But of course, you have to pick the right samples to send. Some companies will just say, send us 3 pieces rather than wanting to go through your entire portfolio. So what I did is I picked out, depending on the asset type, I wanted to show range. So I chose an infographic, I chose a historical technical piece, I chose an interview with a tech company CEO, all these different things that showed range and showed what I was capable of.
Interesting. Yeah, I think many people they may be like, "Hey, let me just show portfolio work that's very specific to one thing." But do you think there's benefits in showing range too, as long as the work is great, right? And
Exactly.
then I think that's the catch. It's like it
Right.
has to be good work, right? Yeah. And then when you think about the industry that you're working in and working as a senior technical creative writer and the different types of work you're doing is not just like segmented to one area, but if you could look at the industry as a whole and try to get an idea of where it's going, what are some things that you see in the future for people in your position?
I see a growing need for technical writers because tech is growing. So technical writers within the tech space, especially, I think there's going to be more of a need there. But also, I've noticed that there's just this huge shift toward the age of convenience. So people want self-service. They want to be able to find their own answers and implement things themselves. They want the digital buy-in experience. All of that stuff has to be backed up by documentation and product support and all these things that technical writers would need to work on. So I definitely see it as a growing field, and branching out into a bunch of different industries. Yeah.
And one of the common things that we hear is that people who work in writer roles often have to make themselves known to other people who need them. Do you feel
Mhm.
like that's been the case in any of the work that you've done where you have to educate your peers to let them understand what you do so you can better contribute to the organization?
I have noticed that. Yeah. I think sometimes you need to demonstrate the value of technical communication. Um, Sometimes people who are not strong writers, and they'll maybe like they'll send something to me for me to review, and then once I change it for them and show them what I came up with, they'll see like, okay, yes, this is better, this is clearer, I appreciate that. So I do think that sometimes you have to demonstrate your own value. But I think less and less as technical writing becomes more common and more necessary. I think less and less we're going to have to do that. But that is a skill in and of itself to be able to demonstrate your own value.
Yeah, so true. And then for many of the people who are watching this video, again, they're looking to break into their first role. So if you were, let's say, expanding your team and you were saying, hey, I would want to hire this person, what would that person look like? And what would make them stand out to you?
I would say someone who is curious, someone who demonstrates versatility, because in my experience, all technical writing projects are different. It depends on the type of asset you're creating. It depends on the product you're supporting. It depends on the team you're working with. If you have graphic design to back you up, if you don't, it depends on so many different factors. So it's just important to be flexible and adaptable, and to also have that curiosity that is going to help you become, at least briefly, an expert in this thing that you're trying to simplify for a broader audience.
Very cool. And then, so when we take it to that last concept you mentioned, simplifying for a broader audience and just taking things that are complex and breaking them down, do you feel like that there is something you're like, hey, this is the job for me because I really like doing this? And were there any signals around that? Because that's such a big part of what technical writers do. And do you feel like as translated to any other parts of your life?
Definitely. I feel like I hate not knowing things, it's the worst. Like I want to know what I'm talking about. So I like getting at the heart of things. And I think that really the heart of technical writing and all writing is just storytelling. And so technical writing is storytelling in a different form. So if you can take that narrative approach, figure out the who, the what, the why, and how to communicate that, to me, it's so rewarding. So I like to take the narrative approach, and just sort of figure out what is it that the audience most wants to know about this thing that I'm writing about, and then figure that out and communicate it. And that's rewarding for me.
Eh, Um, and then, do you have any more advice for people who are looking to break into technical writing and succeed on the job? And many of them are coming from backgrounds such as being engineers, being English teachers, and some are just recent graduates and who are going, hey, what do I even want to do? I found this field and I took a writing class in college. Maybe this is for me.
Yeah, I would say, even if you don't end up becoming a technical writer, if you try it and it's not something you like you're going to learn such valuable skills doing this job. Technical communication, I think, is essential. So for me, I tried out academic publishing, science journalism, and then marketing before I fell into technical writing. And so now I'm technical writing on a marketing team, and I love it. It's been really great for me. So this is definitely the job for me. It took me a while to find it. You can take a nonlinear path. I think the most important thing is to build up that portfolio, keep writing, and then just give it a shot. Because once you are a technical writer, I think you don't necessarily have to stay that forever. For me personally, I really love being in this field, but like as I grow, I might choose content strategy or some sort of other technical communication role. But these skills are going to help you in whatever role you find yourself in.
100%. I think, at the end of the day, you're becoming a subject matter expert. That's what
Mm-hmm.
the technical writer does. And if you can become that, then it's probably one of the easiest transferable roles that you have. Understanding the subject is half the equation to any company that you want to work with. So yeah.
Completely agree. Yeah.
Well, Molly, thank you so much for being here with us today. And for those watching, if you want to go ahead and connect with Molly, make sure to go to the description below this video and you'll see her LinkedIn profile URL there, where you can go ahead and connect with her. And if you have any questions, make sure to drop them on the video and we'll go ahead and answer them later. And again, thank you for watching. And Molly, thank you so much for being with us today.
You're welcome.